All right. Well, speaking of which, the 2000 coup, you've said that it has been wrongly called the Spade coup,
Yeah.
and that historical accounts are quite misleading because they do not bring out the truth of Bainimarama's role in that 2000 coup.
Yeah.
May I ask you, what was Bainimarama's role in the 2000 coup?
Okay. Sashi, what I'm going to say to you, right, is not just based on personal opinion, right? It's based on reading of the Evans Board of Inquiry report, which was the only inquiry ever done into the 2000 coup. And it's been available on the website Truth for Fiji for quite a long time now, right? So I go by that. I also go by what Ratu Tevita Mara, Major Tevita Mara, has himself written publicly about what took place in the coup. Now, even though Tevita Mara is the son of Ratu Mara, right? Even though he supported the coup at the beginning, he and Peter Driti, but later they realized it was all going wrong, and they tried to actually take it differently, and they had to run for their lives. He ran to Tonga, of course, because he's related to the Tongan family where he still is, and Driti, poor fellow, he was imprisoned, right? And I also go by a lot by what a few very, very top military officers have told me over the years, because these are contexts I know because I taught at the military courses between 2000 and 2006, and I've been in communication with them. And when I put things on my blog, especially in my submission to the Yash Guy Draft Commission, right, they have written to me to correct me on what I have written, right? And so first thing I'm going to do is that, right, whatever I've written on my blog site, in the early years, right, on the Yash Guy Commission, has to be corrected by the fact that all of the military hierarchy did not support the 2000 coup. There were many law-abiding senior RFM officers whose reputations must not be tarnished by what I say. And I shall say their names, Sashi, because it's important, that they should not be dishonored, right? There's George Kandavulevu. There's Elisa Kadi Solomone. There's Aquila Buondromo. There's Meli Saumbuluni Yao. There was Orisi Rambuka Wanga, William Eserevukula, Sam Wanga Wakatonga, Wanganisau, Sam Saumatua. There were also a number of decent officers who resigned after the 2006 coup because they felt very deeply that the RFM integrity had been in compromise. There was Sam Pickering, there was John Pickering, Kepa Buondromo, Patrick Hennings, Madhu Manulevu, Sosi Senimbulu, Neuri Tandulala. And so these are people actually who are out there who just resign. And why don't they come up and talk about what they felt was wrong? Well, Saji, I have often grappled with this thing called the culture of silence, with Chodi Mandravivi and I have discussed quite often, right? And the trouble is, there's two things. Fiji is a small place. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody is related to everybody. And there's a Fijian culture, where you don't openly criticize people. You have the Kundru Nivanua, it goes on around the grog bowls of Fiji, right? The murmur of the land. And the thing is that doesn't come out openly in writing so that historians can write about it. Historians, all of them, they just talk about what comes out in written form, not what about really happens, in the back. But the thing is that Ratu Tevita Mara, on that Truth for Fiji website, and Ratu Tevita Mara was initially involved with that website. He says, he's going to reveal the truth, and he did, about the illegal Fiji junta and the Bainimarama's true reasons for the 2006 coup, how he manipulated the Fiji military to cover his tracks. He says Bainimarama did not save Fiji in 2000. He was part of the 2000 coup, and good, loyal Fiji soldiers and people suffered, and some also died because of it. This is deadly stuff. This is terrible stuff. And this is what he has written, right? So it's not my personal opinion. So, after that, I went through that 1,000 pages, Sashi, of that Evans Board of Inquiry report. I mean, you see, anybody can see it, right? And go through it. There's a lot of rubbish in there. But those four officers who did that inquiry, they're junior people, and they did a bloody brave job. I must mention their names, right? Because they were actually fairly relatively junior to all the senior people. There was Lieutenant Colonel Evans, he's now retired. Major Gudake, and that's interesting, eh? Major Gudake resigned and is with UN. There's Warrant Officer Makamba and Major Aziz, who has steadily climbed in the army, senior to everybody, brigadier now, but never been considered for commander. And that tells you something about everybody being equal in Bainimarama's Fiji, right? And he's now professor of law at Fiji University. I shudder to think what he's teaching the students, right? But when you read through it, right, the Evans Board of Inquiry report reveals very clearly in particular in the evidence of Servukula, right, who actually was very centrally involved in bringing control back to the in the coup on the RFMF and all that, right, and he was being undermined all the time by people above him, right. So what it's there in the Evans Board of Inquiry report is that the army intelligence, of which Servukula was head, told Bainimarama 6 months before the coup about meetings between his own military officers, some of them civilians, some politicians, failed politicians, and the exact houses those meetings were being held in, involving some high chiefs from Bau, right? Bainimarama did nothing. I mean, you're a commander, you're being told there are meetings going on to discuss even having a coup, right? 6 months before, and you do nothing. And then 1 week he was told, sir, the coup is going to happen on this day. What did he do? He went off to Norway for a meeting, and he told his officer, okay, well, you talk to other officers how to handle it.
This is in the Evans report.
This is in the Evans report. Yep.
Okay.
This is in the Evans report, right? And so he went off to an unimportant meeting, exactly the tactic used by Commander Nelly Tikau in 1987 when he went off to collect a boat from Perth, right? Your country is going to go have a coup, and you leave the country. You are the commander, supposed to be responsible for the defense and security of Fiji. Oh, well, there's all kinds of things. And the Evans Board of Inquiry report, it addresses it in the first few pages, right? It says, one, the commander refused to be interviewed by us.
Oh.
He's the only senior RFM officer who refused to be interviewed. And I was told by another senior man he told them that if they tried to force him, they would be all discharged for something. There's a military term that he used, and I'll find it here somewhere, right? But the Evans Board of Inquiry report said that the CRW soldiers who did the coup believed that the high command in the RFMF was supporting the coup, and they gave all the reasons, right? First, it was being led by Enquiry, right? He's the guy who actually, is a powerful man, huge status in the military, and he had been brought out of retirement, who by Bainimarama, right? First. Second, the arms for the coup were stored in the parliamentary offices of the Fijian Association Party. Well, there's some big names in there, all linked to Nelly Tikau and others as well, the Kambaus and all that, right? And the arms and ammunitions from the RFMF armory, even after the hostages were taken in Parliament, they kept going into Parliament. Their food was being supplied. Their salary was maintained. And somebody actually from the RFF headquarters took the forms to Parliamentary Complex and got them to sign so that their salaries could continue. And Enquiry kept walking in and out of RFMF headquarters. And worse still, there were some senior RFMF officers who kept visiting them in Parliament and offering them support. So the Evans Board of Inquiry actually said, they named a few people, who they thought were involved, including this person, Tarakini Kini, who the Fiji public will remember coming up on TV all the time. But, he was in phone contact. He was actually in contact with the CRW soldiers on the morning of the coup. And since then, of course, I found out that the military officers, they actually managed to get hold of Vodafone phone records. And they have got a whole list of people who were in phone contact in the early morning of the day of the coup. And some of those names are very, very revealing, right? But, the thing is, that Bainimarama was the only person who refused to be interviewed. And the people who were planning, in the meetings before the coup, and in phone conversations, according to the phone records, right? Where names are actually terrible to hear, especially for me, because I'm friends with many of them, right? There's Nevala Rua, Tuatoka, Randuva, Epenisa, and Lithia Dekambao, Dronindalo, Inoke Kumbumbola, Rambuka, Bakalalambure, Vili Volvola, Garinivalu, Andi Lithia Dekambao, Andi Talakulia Dekambao, Ratu Nekama, Lalambalabu, Silatolu, Ngarikau. Man, you've got the whole Fijian establishment there.
Just
Yeah.
one clarification. These names that you've taken, this is also
Yes.
in the Evans Board of
No,
Inquiry
those are not.
report.
Those are not in the Evans Board of Inquiry. They have been actually told me, by my sources, in the military, who, when they
Mhm.
tried to find out actually who was behind the coup, one of the key ones managed to get hold of Vodafone records, which he still has. He still
Okay.
has them. Yeah. Not
All
my
right.
words,
So,
actually. Yeah.
so how is it then that the public saw that Bainimarama arresting all the Spade Group and the CRW soldiers, who
Yeah.
were all eventually jailed, including some high chiefs like Ratu Chope Seniloli,
Yeah.
and some other very prominent names were spared? How did that happen?
Well, I think this is something that the indigenous Fijians, the leading people in Fiji, they all know what happened, right? Because there were two coups happening within the big coup. George Speight was only the front person, right? There was somebody else who was supposed to go and take over, after the coup, and then he chickened out, and the names that have been suggested are very obvious. I mean, from what I've said previously, right?
Okay, let's not
But,
mention those names if we
no, we
can't
won't mention the
substantiate
names.
them.
No, no. But
Yeah.
there were two other coups. The first big coup that was happening was in Fiji. There's always been tension between the three dynasties of Mara, Ganilao, and the Dakambaus, right?
Hmm.
Always. And if you look at Ratu Mara, one of the things he did, what was royal families in Europe used to do, they used to marry off their sons and daughters to rivals in order to diffuse the tension. So if you
Hmm.
look at Ratumara's daughters, I mean, they're married to the other two chiefly dynasties, right? And one of the things that happened during the 2000 coup, chiefs from Vitilevu felt, hey, it's time actually, the power came back to our hands. And what they did also successfully in that coup was they got rid of Ratumara as president, to his massive disappointment, right? And the second thing that happened during the second coup that happened, some military officers saw an opportunity to actually take over the RFMF. And the group, Spade Group, announced at one stage that the new commander would be Colonel Vatu, and his chief of staff would be Tarakinikini. And I think the public knows in Fiji that Bainimarama fell out very badly with Tarakinikini afterwards, and he went off to New York and all that, right? And he, in fact, even threatened to sue Bainimarama and demanded, publicize that Evans Board of Inquiry report, or I'll come through the courts and get it from you, right? But anyway, it was then that Bainimarama suddenly realized, this is what I'm being told, that hold on, I'm dispensable in this coup as well. So then he clamped down, and Servukula, actually, who was being undermined all the time, whenever he tried to put a cordon around the parliamentary complex, he was countermanded by people on above him. He couldn't understand it. But eventually, when Bainimarama then threw in his support about actually getting these people, out and arrested and all that, then the coup failed, and the Evans Board of Inquiry report has got a very, very strong statement to make, right? And this is something that the people in the RFMF now should think about very, very seriously, including its current commander, Koloni Wai.
Hmm.
The Evans Board of Inquiry report concluded, undoubtedly, I'm just quoting now, Sashi, right? The legislations provides RFMF with the primary function of protecting the constitution, the commander-in-chief, the president of Fiji, the government of the day. That's what is there in the legislation, right?
Right.
And there was two words added by Ayaz, which was never there, which I'll talk about. And the Evans Board of Inquiry report, concluded. This is page 234 and page 11, page LI, whatever it is, right in the beginning. The RFMF, in effect, failed its mission when it asked the president to step down and abrogated the constitution, or tried to abrogate it, right, which it couldn't, right?
Mm.
Now, Sashi, I'll give you an analogy, Sashi, right? Let's say in Australia here, right, a group of soldiers, decide, hey, we're going to take over the country, right? And they take over some building or something like that, like the parliamentary complex, hold the parliamentarians hostage, right? And then the military says, we're going to impose order. Prime Minister, you step down. You
mm,
abrogate the constitution. I'm going to take over. Can you imagine what would happen in Australia if a military guy tried to do that to the prime minister of the country? Oh, blooming hell! I tell you what, all the
total
farmers in the
revolt.
country, all the farmers in the country will be bringing out their knives, and these military guys, will be told where to put their bloody rifle barrels, right? But in
Mm,
Fiji, that's what happened. I mean, how dare anybody ask the president, Ratu Marat, the commander in chief, to step down so that the RFMF with 3,000 soldiers can bring these 30 soldiers under control and abrogate the constitution to boot.
mm,
That's what they did. How dare they? But this is what Frank Bainimarama did in 2000. And the historians, don't want to look at the basic facts and the stupidity of their bloody historical analysis and going by the rhetoric of what Bainimarama was saying, right, in 2000. So anyway, they did this. And honestly, I'll come to Gates' judgment later on about whether constitution can be abrogated or not. But the result of that was when all the CRW soldiers in Parliament felt that they had the support of Bainimarama and the High Command for all the reasons I've outlined, and then suddenly they were being arrested and put into jail.